All our stories are created for entertainment purposes only.
Back when I was 17, I moved to a new state right before my senior year in high school. That's where I met my wife, who's the same age as me, just a few weeks into the school year. She became my first girlfriend, and honestly, my one and only in every way. First kiss partner, you name it. It didn't take long for me to fall head over heels in love with her. We spent a solid 8 years dating, but deep down, we both knew we were going to end up tying the knot after just a couple of years together. See, we had this idea that since we'd met at 17, we should give it some time, grow older, and get more mature before taking the plunge. So we didn't rush into marriage. Fast forward, we ended up being married for 18 years and together for over 26. We had this successful business going on, and we could basically live anywhere since it was home-based. My wife pitched in now and then, but mainly she relied on my earnings. I didn't mind, you know? I'd grown up thinking that a man should be the breadwinner in the family. Like any couple, we had our fair share of ups and downs, but we kept chugging along. Then, in 2015, her mom got hit by cancer, and within a year, she was gone. As if that wasn't enough, her dad followed just 9 months later. And to top it off, our business went belly up in late 2019, forcing us to file for bankruptcy early in 2020. Honestly, I was pretty down in the dumps during all this. I'd been grappling with depression for years. The one thing I held on to as a silver lining was my marriage. But with our business tanking, my wife had to pick up a job to help keep us afloat. She ended up working at a big retail store and even worked her way up to being a manager. During all these tough times, I managed to pack on an extra 100 pounds over a few years. So now, here I am, dealing with being overweight, the collapse of my business, and feeling like I'm at rock bottom. It's been quite a ride. When COVID started surging and the lockdowns hit, I pretty much became a recluse because I've got asthma and was genuinely worried. My wife, on the other hand, kept working through it all. She started pulling late shifts, and on her days off, she'd go to Target and shop quite a bit, which, during lockdowns, now seems like a red flag. One Sunday morning, she wakes me up at the crack of dawn, like 6 a.m., and tells me she's heading to the park for a walk because her legs feel restless. It struck me as a bit odd, but hey, I've done late-night treadmill strolls myself due to restless leg syndrome, so I didn't think much of it. No biggie. So she gets back home, we have breakfast, she takes a shower, and the usual morning stuff. I'm in my office doing my computer thing when she shows off her whole body and then heads to the bedroom. I follow suit because, we used to have a pretty active love life. She's all up for BJ, but I catch a weird smell, so I hold back. I figure maybe it's just from her morning walk in the park. At that point, the thought of her cheating on me was so far from my mind. I wasn't even worried. But something's starting to gnaw at me. The next day, I peek at her browsing history, and I see that she was on the Facebook pages of a couple of guys I know don't work at her store. That raises some eyebrows because she doesn't really have guy friends who aren't co-workers. Another day passes, and my thoughts are still wandering. My D-Day, so to speak, happened on July 22nd, 2020, around 3 a.m. I woke up, thinking maybe I should grab her phone and snoop around. I lay in bed for a while, debating whether I should even bother getting up because I was pretty tired. Eventually, I grab her phone, not knowing exactly what I'm looking for. Almost immediately, I spot Snapchat, which I had no clue she even had. She's got 3 male friends, 2 of them I saw on her Facebook, and there's this guy from her work. Even though she denies anything with him, I have my doubts. One morning, she wakes up and asks if I'm all right. So I muster the courage to ask her if she's cheating on me, and of course, she denies it. We talk for a few hours, and then I figure out I can download her Snapchat history. I lock myself in a bedroom and go for it. She pleads with me not to, admitting that she cheated on me. Boom! My whole world crumbles, and the pain is something only those who've been betrayed can truly understand. I feel like she abandoned me at my lowest point when I needed her the most. She denies it, but the facts are clear. She throws in my face that she's the one supporting us now, conveniently forgetting the first 16 years of our marriage when she didn't have to work and could shop all the time. Oh yeah, and now she claims she's not materialistic. It's news to me considering how much she loves to shop. You know the saying, they cheat down? Well, these guys she was involved with are both broke losers. One even borrowed money from my wife. I'll get back to that later. And the other lives in a shabby trailer owned by a relative because his credit is so terrible he can't rent on his own. Plus, he's got over 10 DUIs. I messaged both of these guys on Facebook, calling them pieces of crap and spilling the beans about each other. Funny how they got upset she was cheating on me with more than just them. One never replied, while the one who stole the money now wants to fight me. Later on, I find out he's completely obsessed with fighting me and keeps telling my wife he wants to brawl. Slowly but surely, she starts admitting to things, but it's like pulling teeth. I asked about protection, and she nonchalantly says, "Of course, that's what people do nowadays." She makes it sound like it wasn't a big deal, nothing special. Just contact, but nothing like what we had. On the day I found out, I asked her to message each guy saying it's over. My husband knows. It took her a grueling 7 hours to send those messages, and I was practically begging her to do it. Later, I asked her 8 questions about what they did, and she only admitted to 2 of them. We both went and got tested for STDs, luckily coming out clean. I remember a few weeks before I found out, she wanted me to please her, and I noticed something down there. I made a face, and she freaked out, running to the bathroom, claiming it was just a discharge or something. I'm not freaking out or anything, but I gotta admit, I'm seriously grossed out. I mean, seriously, she had the nerve to ask me to do that after being with someone else? Now I'm thinking she's done this twice, and since I used to do this to her quite a bit, chances are I did it after she had been with someone else too. It's just downright disgusting. I can't help but wonder, did that turn her on or something? Does she have so little respect for me that she'd ask for that, knowing I'd be clueless? Or maybe it's some twisted thing they all discussed, like they get some weird thrill out of it? Her excuses were all over the place. I didn't love her anymore. Clearly not true. She missed out on her wild college years. We weren't making each other happy anymore. Total shocker to me, and she never talked to me about it. Her siblings were promiscuous, she craved attention, COVID messed with her head, and a bunch more that I thankfully can't recall right now. The next few weeks were just painful, with her apologizing and claiming she never wanted to leave me. She said she didn't think about it, she just did it. That stung. She didn't even think about the fact that she was wrecking our marriage and devastating me. No, she just went ahead and hooked up with both of those guys. One of them even liked to bring up our marriage. He'd say stuff like, "I bet your husband is cheating on you." And she'd reply with, "My husband would never cheat on me." The irony here is painful. He then asks what I'd do if I found out, and she says, he'd end his life. She tells me this, and it just crushes me. She then brushes it off as a joke, but honestly, that doesn't make it any better. In fact, it might even be worse. She's joking about me ending things while she's fooling around with some other guy. She also has the audacity to say, "My husband will never divorce me." Fast forward 2 weeks, and I hit rock bottom. I actually decide to end it all. I write a note, take a picture of it, and send it to her. She panics, calls the cops, they find me, slap on handcuffs, and whisk me away to the hospital. Eventually, they let me go. Over the next few months, I keep trying to end things. I Google ways to do it, but each time I somehow stop myself. Now, I'm grateful I did. There's life after this. Turns out she never really cut off contact with either of those guys. Luckily, one of them seems to have said his goodbyes. As far as I know, they're not in touch anymore. But the other guy? She's constantly talking to him, mainly because she lent him money and now wants it back. I tell her to just let the money go, but she insists she can't. I argue that it's more than just money, but she denies it. Little does she know, I have her Facebook password, and I've been reading her messages with that money guy. He eventually blocks her, but she remembers she has his phone number and texts him from work. They end up having a big argument, and he straight up asks to hook up with her again, and she replies with a, "maybe." I find out about this because she's boasting to a friend on FB Messenger, and well, I couldn't help but read it. I immediately ask her if she's planning to hook up with that guy again, and she denies it. So I bring up the fact that I saw her phone, without letting her know I have her FB password, and she finally confesses. My frustration gets the best of me, and I punch a hole through the bedroom door. She gives the guy until Friday to pay her back. But after 6 weeks, he says he won't pay her back, and that's when she seems to snap out of her fog. She claims to feel free. Looking back, I should have left at this point, probably even on D-Day, but when your world crumbles out of nowhere, it's tough to just walk away. For the next 8 months, we're constantly fighting. I keep finding more and more evidence, and I can't stop snooping around. She only admits to what I can prove, which keeps adding up. She says all the right things, but I can't come to terms with what she did. Deep down, though, I know I can't imagine life without her. We decide to start marriage counseling, MC, but it's unbearable because we have to discuss what she did, the physical stuff. So, we stop MC. About a month later, I stumble upon her diary. Yes, she actually kept a diary with dates, details about which guy, what they did, and how much she enjoyed it. Remember those 8 questions I had about what they did? She lied about all 8. Not a huge surprise, really. And of course, there was no protection used, which her diary confirms. She even documented where each guy used to finish on her. When I freaked out about this, she tried to downplay it and said I was more upset about that than helping her through this. I also found out she took a pregnancy test about 2 weeks before I found out about everything. She claims it was just to confirm she wasn't pregnant, but it stung deeply because we couldn't have children. I'm still pretty upset about that, to be honest. Fast forward to 2 weeks after my hospital ordeal, and I discover she wrote in her diary that she still had a strong desire to hook up with the guy who stole the money, just one more time. She couldn't stop thinking about him, but to my face, she's saying sorry. It's over, she loves me, she wants our marriage, and she's thankful I haven't walked away. Now I realize she didn't respect me. She thought I'd never leave her, and that she could do whatever she pleased, and I'd always stay. Unfortunately, she was probably right. Then, in late March 2021, she suggests we try a trial separation. I reluctantly agree and plan to move to my brother's house, which is 8 hours away in another state, for 2-3 months. However, on the day of my move, I just can't bring myself to leave. I end up unpacking the truck. She then suggests I at least visit my brother for a few days and thinks it might be all we need. So I agree. I leave on a Tuesday, and my birthday falls on a Wednesday. We stay in touch through texts, calls, and FaceTime every day. She says she misses me, loves me, wants me as her husband, and I head out for pizza with a childhood friend on my birthday. I'm supposed to call her when I leave, but she texts and says she's going to work out and walk the dogs, so if I could call a bit later. So I decide to call later while I'm driving back to my brother's place. We chat, and I mention that my buddy gave me some advice, and I realize I really want to fix our marriage because I don't want anyone else. She wonders if I'm ready to leave the past behind. I tell her I am. I get back on Saturday, and for some reason, I decide to snoop through her emails. She's cleared her inbox, trash, everything, but I check the important folder. On my birthday at 7:37 p.m., she turns off her iPhone tracking and sleeps with the guy who took the money. That's when she texted me saying she's busy and asked if I could call later. That's my second huge shock. I text her while she's at work, asking how she could do this to me on my birthday. She says we'll talk when she's home. I lose it and show up at her work, yelling and making a scene in front of her colleagues. Now I'm the crazy husband, and they probably get why she'd cheat. 2 days later, I file for divorce, and a week after that, I move to my brother's. I take our dogs, we don't have kids, and leave pretty much everything else behind, thinking maybe one day we'll get back together. Before I leave, she hints that maybe we could get back together in the future, but I'd have to be okay with her seeing other guys while we're divorced. Over the next 8 months, she keeps texting, calling, and FaceTiming, saying she loves me and is sorry, but never that she wants me back. We're divorced, but I'm still holding on to the hope that we'll remarry. We meet up 5 months later for a weekend halfway between our places. We end up kissing. I really want to sleep with her. I know it's wrong. Because she's the only one I've ever been with. I was taught you only do that with your spouse. I just want to feel that connection again. We start to get intimate, but she stops me. She says it was hard to resist me, but all I can think about is how it wasn't hard for her to resist her boyfriends. That's what I call them. I leave feeling terrible. I slowly start to feel better. I plan another visit after Christmas, but she makes it clear we're not on the same page anymore. She's led me to believe we might remarry, but now she's saying no. I cancel the trip. The Tuesday after Christmas, when I would have been visiting, she texts me out of nowhere, saying she's thinking of me and just wanted to say hi. I don't respond. I finally got back on Reddit and started checking out the forums. I read this book by Chump Lady and it totally changed my perspective. I've stopped all contact with her and feel great about never speaking to her again. After reading the book, it's clear she did everything typical cheaters do. She's not unique or deep, just superficial, and put her need for attention above our marriage without caring about the damage she caused. 10 days later, she texts me just to say hi. but I'm pretty sure there's more to it than that. Then, a week after that, she texts asking how I'm doing. She even called me a couple of days ago, but I didn't answer. I know I should block her, but I haven't been able to yet. However, I haven't reached out to her in 36 days. I've heard she's maxed out her credit cards and is struggling with money. Meanwhile, I'm working a job I enjoy and have even started a new business. I'm starting from scratch, but feel like I'm on the path to happiness, even if I don't meet someone else. I wish I had left her immediately, but we can't change the past. No matter what stage you're in, it's fine. You'll figure it out as you go. You can find peace in divorce. I'm so much better off not having to worry every day and constantly check her phone and computer to catch her. She can do whatever she wants now. She can't have me. She might not care, and that's fine. I thought I was losing, but now I see I've won. Cheaters lack integrity, morals, and character. It's hard to understand if you're not like that. I used to think she just made a mistake and wanted our marriage. But when she started flirting and having affairs, she gave up on us. I thought we were a team, and that's why I waited for her to realize I'm what she wants. But once they cheat, you're not a team anymore. That's tough to accept, but it's true. I wonder if she ever cheated during our 26 years together. We worked from home a lot, so I don't know how she could have met someone else. But I guess that'll stay a mystery. And honestly, I don't care anymore. What I've learned is to watch what they do, not what they say. She claimed she loved me, but I was naive enough to believe her while she continued her antics. She thinks I stayed because she's special, but the truth is I'm just too loyal. And it was my loyalty, not her being special, that made me stay. She's not special. She's trash. I'm probably forgetting half the details by now, thankfully. Story 2. I stumbled upon my future wife Amber totally by accident. I was hanging out at a college buddy's place to work on a project. While I was there, this girl around our age, his neighbor, popped over to get some cooking lessons from his mom on a fancy recipe. After my friend and I wrapped up our project, the ladies finished cooking, and we all shared a nice meal. That's how I met Amber. I was 20 and she was 21. We dated for a year and got hitched right after college, moving into my late grandma's apartment that my parents gave us as a wedding gift. Times were tough at first. We were both job hunting with barely any cash, but we made it work. I landed a decent job that fit my skills, and Amber started pulling in good money at her job too. Once things felt more stable, we began talking about having kids. Amber wanted a boy and a girl but was worried about health issues affecting her ability to have healthy babies. So we went all in on prepping for pregnancy, attending courses, visiting doctors, and getting regular tests. But just when the docs gave us the green light, Amber did a 180 on having kids. She said we were too young and had plenty of time, suggesting we should focus on upgrading our living situation first, like getting a bigger place with enough room for everyone. I was on board, just a bit thrown off by her sudden change of heart. Then some odd stuff started happening that got me suspicious. Amber was glued to social media, but only on her work laptop, which she suddenly password protected along with her phone, even though I never touched them. We began having communication issues and secrets popped up. It didn't mess with our day-to-day life much, but it really hit our bed life. Amber often came home wiped out, sometimes didn't even come to bed, just worked away on her laptop. I wasn't happy about it. I tried to have an open chat with her, but it blew up into a huge argument with her accusing me of not respecting her work commitment. Honestly, I was left clueless by the whole fight. Later on, I found out the real issue, and it had nothing to do with her job. I usually don't come home for lunch, but that day I decided to leave work early after clearing it with my boss. My wife had the day off, and I thought I'd surprise her. I picked up some flowers and planned to take her out for a nice, quiet lunch where we could hopefully have a real heart-to-heart. But when I walked in, I could tell right away from the hallway that something was going on in the kitchen. Amber and some guy froze and scrambled to get dressed when they saw me. Clothes were everywhere. Then, out of nowhere, Amber tells me it's time we had an honest conversation. I was shocked by her nerve and the cold way she said it. I lost it, yelling at her and her lover to get out. I can't even remember all the things I shouted in my anger and hurt. We were all standing there, facing off. The guy tried to say something, maybe to calm me down, but I wasn't having it. I shoved his hand away and landed a couple of punches on him, but Amber jumped in to defend him. That's when she dropped the bomb that she was planning to leave me for this guy and threw some nonsense about me not having the right to be in a foreign country. As he started talking, I noticed his broken English and heavy accent. He said he'd loved Amber for a long time and was here to take her back to Spain with him. I sized him up. He was over 40, not much to look at, but dressed in expensive clothes, obviously some rich guy after a younger woman. Then it all clicked. A while back, when I was tidying up and putting away laundry, I found a couple of books in her underwear drawer. One was an English-Spanish phrase book, another completely in Spanish, and a textbook for learning Spanish from scratch. Back in the day, I was just caught off guard, but didn't think much of it. Maybe my wife wanted to pick up a new language and then go on a trip with me to Spain or some other Spanish-speaking place on our vacation. But now, I get it. All those secret messages were about foreign language books, thanks to her lover. I feel like such a fool for not realizing it sooner. It turns out they were waiting for me to get home from work that evening to drop the bombshell. They'd been writing letters for a whole year and had been sneaking around for almost a month, secretly dating. My wife told me she loved this guy a lot, that she met him online, they fell in love, and he came for her. He seemed like a great guy, way better than me in every way, polite, kind, and chivalrous. She planned to go to Spain with him and live in the city of Malaga. She mentioned that all the divorce papers were ready and I could sign them right then. She'd already signed hers. She packed up what she needed for the short term, and I could toss out the rest because her lover promised to buy her new stuff. They were flying out in 2 weeks. Already got the plane tickets. After hearing that whole story, all I managed to do was punch that Spaniard in the stomach a few times, which made him quickly leave our house. What really got me was Amber's nerve as she tried to scold me for my actions without saying a word. I grabbed her by the hair and shoved her out the door, slamming it in her face. Not long after, her packed suitcases went flying too, because she started yelling that she'd call the cops if I didn't give them back. I didn't regret my behavior one bit. In fact, I had to stop myself from giving Amber a slap in the face. If her lover's so well off, he can get her a hotel room and let her live with him. I called my workplace right away and took a week off, even if it meant paying for it myself. To be honest, when I told my boss about my divorce from my wife, he totally got it. After that, I headed to the store and used the money I had set aside for our dinner date to buy a bunch of booze and food instead. I ended up drinking for 3 days straight. The rest of the time, I just lounged around at home, doing absolutely nothing. I mean, how could I focus on anything else with all that stuff going on in my head? By the end of my time off, I finally came to terms with the fact that my marriage was over. Even though it hurt like hell, I figured it was still better than living through a never-ending nightmare. I never saw her deceit and betrayal coming. You'd think my story would have ended there, right? But life isn't always as straightforward as we want it to be. 3 weeks had gone by since I kicked my wife and her lover out, and I was just getting home from work, looking forward to dinner and some TV time with a cold beer. That's when the doorbell rang, and guess who was standing there? Yep, my wife. She wasted no time and said we needed to have a serious talk. I invited her in, saying, "Sure, let's talk if we have to." "How?" I asked with a smirk. "I can't find the words for you." Turns out this Spaniard had more than just my wife on his radar in America. Apart from her, he had 7 other women, but he ended up choosing someone else. Not my wife at all. He flew off to Spain with a 19-year-old girl, leaving Amber high and dry, taking all her money and expensive jewelry with him. So, my wife spent a whole week living with her mom and thinking about everything. She realized how much she had lost by leaving me, and that she couldn't live without me. With fake tears in her eyes, she confessed she had made a massive mistake, that she actually loved only me, deeply regretted her actions, and asked for forgiveness. She knew it wouldn't come easy, but she was ready to work on herself and make things right. She even wanted to have kids with me and agreed to all the conditions I laid out. Of course, she was curious if I had signed those divorce papers or not. I told her, "Sure, I'll consider it. Come back in about 3 weeks." But honestly, I hadn't actually signed those papers yet, even though I said I had. Then I threw in, "You better leave now because some girls were supposed to come over to my place." Her reaction to me mentioning other women was priceless, even though it was a total lie. I didn't feel bad about playing that little prank. When my wife returned 3 weeks later, I was dead set on getting that divorce. I had already signed all the paperwork and sent it off to the court. Amber seemed to explode with emotion right then and there. She admitted that everything she had done was a massive mistake and she didn't want to lose me. She hugged me and cried for real this time. No more fake tears. I felt some sympathy for her, but the trust and love were long gone. I couldn't forgive the betrayal and deceit I had gone through, and I doubted I ever would. After the divorce, I felt a wave of relief and newfound freedom. It turned out that I still owned my grandmother's apartment, so I had a comfortable place to stay and enjoy some solitude for a while. Amber kept hanging around, begging for forgiveness, and maybe hoping I'd give our relationship another shot, but it wasn't happening. She eventually moved back in with her parents, and that's where our communication completely ended. I haven't really thought about how she's doing now. I'm still young, so I can focus on myself and live life my way. Story 3. We've been together for 15 years, married for 7. Just this past Sunday, I found out she's been cheating on me with some guy she met less than 5 months ago, even as recently as tonight. Right now, I'm holding up. I've been gathering all the crucial documents and financial info. I opened a new bank account just for me and transferred a good amount of cash into it, just to make sure she doesn't take off with everything we have. I had a long talk with my dad who went through a similar ordeal back in the day, and he gave me some solid advice and perspective. I'm planning to file for divorce myself, and I'm pretty sure she won't fight it once she realizes how much it would cost her to argue or try to mediate. I picked Friday to break the news because it's a long weekend. That'll give her some time to pack up her essentials and leave while I crash somewhere else. I've been mulling over what to say to her. Part of me wants to lash out, say every harsh thing I've been thinking, and just let her have it. But then I remember what my dad said about being the bigger person. He suggested I let her speak her piece, really listen, and handle the whole thing calmly, like 2 adults. No anger, no spite, and nothing I might regret later. I'm really torn. Part of me craves the immediate satisfaction of unleashing all my anger on her for betraying me. I feel like it might help me move on. But then, there's this voice inside telling me my dad's right. This might be our last real conversation, leaving her with the image of me as the better person, the one she's losing, who listened and didn't judge, might say more than any insult I could throw at her. But then again, if she truly doesn't care, it might not make any difference at all. Update. When the day came to confront her, I took some advice I found online and decided to be straightforward. Not cruel, not sympathetic, just direct. I wasn't in the right headspace for a conversation, so I wrote her a letter instead. It basically said, "I know about your affair. Our marriage is over. My mind's made up. Don't try to reach out. I'll contact you when I'm ready. I expect you to be gone when I get back." I realized that my initial urge to be mean or understanding was just about getting a reaction from her, but I now see that whatever her reaction would have been, it wouldn't have changed what I needed to do. So, I left the letter and took off for the weekend. When I got back, she was still there. I told her I wasn't ready to talk, and after a lot of tears, she left to stay with a friend. Since then, I've been busy setting up my new life. I landed a new job starting in March, and I'm on the hunt for a new place to live. I've separated a significant portion of our finances to protect myself in case she tries to take off with it. I've filled out the divorce papers. They just need to be stamped and served. Last Friday, I sat down with her to discuss the nitty-gritty of our split. Despite everything, I still care about her, and I know the divorce is going to hit her hard. She depends on me for pretty much everything. Health insurance, rent, she doesn't even drive. The talk really shattered her. I kept my emotions in check, just like I've been doing all this time. I told her I'd reach out when I was ready to talk again. Then, out of the blue yesterday, she showed up wanting to talk, trying to convince me to reconsider. I finally got through to her when I explained that I needed time to heal on my own, and she couldn't be part of that. She understood that if this was what I needed to find happiness, she'd step back. For the first time, we really talked it out. She owned up to everything, never once trying to pin any blame on me. I wasn't ready to dive into the specifics of her affair, and she respected that, but she answered all my questions with honesty. We talked like we used to, as a couple, open and honest. I believe she was being truthful because I know her so well. That's what makes this so tough. It wasn't some stranger I was talking to. It was her, the person I've known inside and out for 15 years. I just couldn't wrap my head around why or how she could do this to us. It might sound typical, but she was the last person I ever expected to betray me like this. Everyone I've confided in about this was just as stunned and baffled as I was. We ended the conversation last night on a sad but peaceful note. I agreed she could come by today to pick up more of her stuff. But today, everything shifted for me. She came over and we talked some more. I ended up telling her how I discovered her affair. She'd been off for months, coming home drunk almost every night and drinking even more once she was home. Then I noticed her phone messages were set to content hidden, and I knew something was up. One night after she passed out, I checked her phone and found messages with a contact saved under a famous dead artist's name. Obviously a fake. The messages were explicit and had been going on for months. There was no doubt in my mind she was cheating. She'd meet up with this guy after work and come home late. The details in those messages made it clear to me that divorce was the only way forward. When I told her all this, her demeanor shifted. She was still remorseful, but in a different way. She admitted there was more to the story than just the texts. She confessed the first time it happened was her fault, and she felt terrible about it, vowing never to let it happen again. But then, she said the second time was different. He forced himself on her, holding her down while she screamed no. She's not even sure if what happened counts as assault because she blames herself for being in that situation. The only way she could cope was to keep the affair going so she wouldn't feel used or like a victim. I was skeptical until she showed me a diary entry on her phone from around that time before I had any clue. It made me believe she was telling the truth. Suddenly, I saw the affair from her point of view. There's a whole mess of psychological issues tangled up in this, but now I get why it continued and why she suddenly started drinking so much. She was drowning in shame and had no one to confide in. She couldn't come to terms with whether or not she was assaulted, so she convinced herself she was just messed up and kept going to avoid facing the reality that she might be a victim. She hadn't shared any of this before because I wasn't ready for the details, but she still fully admits what she did was wrong. Now everything's flipped on its head again. I don't think there's any legal route to take at this point. As for our relationship, I'm at a loss. I was all set to file for divorce, even though it meant losing the most important person in my life. I thought she was just being selfish and having fun, but now I see how much more complicated it is. It doesn't excuse her initial choice, but everything after that second time is much clearer to me. I'm torn about what to do next. Maybe I could forgive her, but I'm not sure. I'm still reeling from her actions, but I'm even more upset about what happened to her. I still love her, but I don't know if that's enough to stay together. I'm scared of making a choice I'll regret, but I don't even know which choice that would be. Edit. Just to be clear, I'm not looking for sympathy for myself or my wife. I know it might seem foolish to believe her story. I do believe her, but part of me feels like I shouldn't. It seems more plausible to me that this actually happened than her concocting some elaborate lie. This is all still very fresh. It only happened a few hours ago, and maybe I jumped the gun posting about it. Feel free to share your thoughts. I'm open to hearing them. Just know I'm not being naive or trying to over-dramatize the situation. I'm just looking for some conversation and insight.